Jim Carrey, the world-famous A-list actor who's had gigantic smash movies, he's not talking like that at all. He's like talking like some guy. A bunch of like interviews and clips of him discussing things where you're like, whoa, like this guy.
Joe Rogan just exposed a list of celebrities who allegedly have been cloned, and he did it all in under 20 minutes. Names like Jim Carrey, Jamie Foxx, Kanye West, and more came up, with some cases presenting evidence that is incredibly difficult to explain away. First on Rogan's list was Jim Carrey. The reasoning was immediate. Carrey had not been publicly seen since November of the previous year, and when he appeared at the 51st César Awards in Paris, the reaction online was instantaneous. People who had followed him for decades noticed that his movements, speech patterns, and presence felt completely unfamiliar. It wasn't just his appearance that raised eyebrows, it was everything that preceded it. For years, the world knew Jim Carrey as a man who openly rejected Hollywood conventions, describing award shows as meaningless and claiming he had attended precisely because of that meaninglessness. He often spoke of himself as a field of energy with no fixed identity, insisting there was no such thing as Jim Carrey, and openly dismissing what the industry was trying to sell. After Diddy's arrest, Carrey had even spoken about humiliation rituals, couch culture, and cult-like behavior still running rampant in Hollywood, showing no subtlety in his contempt for the system. Years before that, he had sat across from David Letterman on live television and produced what he called the all-mocking tongue, claiming it was a secret Illuminati symbol. He named Letterman and Jimmy Fallon, alleging that talk show hosts were hired by the government to keep the public distracted, comfortable, and too entertained to notice the reality around them. The audience laughed, dismissing it as a joke, but after Paris, people revisited those clips with a very different perspective. Then, an old Letterman interview resurfaced, in which Carrey casually admitted to using a body double to manage the paparazzi. He would send the double in one direction, drawing the press, while moving freely in the other, something he described as fantastic. Using a double for paparazzi avoidance is one thing, but using one to accept an international award and publicly reverse years of personal statements suggested something far more deliberate. Adding fuel to the speculation, a makeup artist named Alexis Stone posted images online appearing to show a Carrey-like prosthetic mask, accompanied by captions strongly implying a transformation had taken place. The story was that McCartney was killed in a car accident, and that the remaining Beatles, along with their label, brought in a convincing replacement rather than let the grief of millions destroy the group. The switch supposedly was seamless enough that nobody noticed. What kept the theory alive was the alleged evidence inside the music itself. Playing the end of Strawberry Fields Forever, Believers claimed, revealed John Lennon saying, "I buried Paul." Lennon said he was saying cranberry sauce. Revolution 9 played backwards was said to produce the phrase, "Turn me on, dead man." Album covers were picked apart for symbolic clues. Photographs of McCartney taken years apart were compared to argue that the person performing under that name from the 1970s onward was physically not the same person that recorded the early Beatles catalog. McCartney heard all of it and decided to respond, not with a denial or with a press statement. He released an entire album in 1993 titled Paul is Live, essentially a direct joke aimed at everyone who believed he was dead. The crowd laughed. The theory did not care. It was still spreading the next day. In 2024, more than 50 years after it started, the theory was pulling millions of views on social media. McCartney has given hundreds of interviews, been photographed thousands of times, and never stopped performing for 6 decades. He has denied it more times than anyone has bothered to count. The theory has survived every single one of them, which is either proof that no amount of evidence can kill a good story, or proof that no amount of denial can either. McCartney was the oldest case. By the early 2000s, who did it attach itself to? Avril Lavigne. Rogan called this one the most widespread version of the theory in the internet age. It started in 2011 by a Brazilian fan blog called Avril Está Morta, Avril is Dead. The claim was that Lavigne died at the height of her early fame and was replaced by a lookalike named Melissa Vandella, who had originally been hired as a paparazzi decoy to handle the intense press attention around her. When Lavigne died, Melissa stepped into the role permanently,
and the label kept it quiet because she was too commercially valuable to simply disappear. Believers pointed to lyrics they said Melissa had embedded in songs as a way of quietly signaling guilt to the public. They described a noticeable shift in vocal quality between albums. They compared photographs taken years apart and argued the facial structure had changed beyond aging alone could produce. They also noted that Lavigne appeared slightly shorter in later appearances than she had at the start of her career. Lavigne addressed it directly on a podcast in 2024. She said she found the whole thing funny, pointing out that the same fans who told her she had not aged a day were the same ones insisting she was a completely different person. She called the theory dumb, but said she felt she had ended up with a relatively harmless version of this kind of rumor compared to what other people on this list were dealing with. Lavigne could laugh about it. The next case on this list was far darker. A woman who spent 13 years without legal control over her own life, and what she revealed when that period ended was a lot harder to dismiss than a fan blog. How much of her life was hers? Britney Spears. Rogan's argument about Spears was different from the others. There was no mugshot to compare, no freckles, no missing tattoo. What he was pointing to had a paper trail and a courtroom attached. From 2008 to 2021, Britney Spears had no legal authority over her own finances, her career decisions, or her personal life. Everything was managed by someone else under a court-ordered conservatorship. During those 13 years, people who had followed her closely noticed persistent changes in her behavior, her emotional range, the way she presented herself in interviews, and the way she spoke about her own situation. Whether the replacement was literal or operational, the visible result was the same: a person stripped of all legal autonomy, medicated on a schedule she did not control, performing on demand, and unable to speak openly about what was happening to her. When the conservatorship ended in 2021, Spears spoke about what those years had actually been. She described being forced to perform on a schedule she could not refuse, being denied the right to choose her own doctor, and being placed on lithium against her wishes when she disagreed with her management. She also revealed she had been denied the right to have her own money, a credit card taken away, and at one point was not allowed to drive her own car. 13 years for a woman whose name was on every billboard in America. The only question left was how people wanted to categorize what had been done to her. Spears had a legal paper trail that made her case unusually well documented. The next person had something different, and yet the theory around her kept growing. Anyway, Rogan then moved on to Selena Gomez. He noted that her case had the clearest medical explanation, which paradoxically made it one of the most interesting. Gomez had undergone a kidney transplant in 2017 after her lupus reached a point that made the procedure medically necessary. She openly stated, "We really hoped that it would be something that obviously saved my life." In the years that followed, her appearance changed visibly. Her weight fluctuated, her face looked different, and these changes were consistent with well-documented side effects of transplant medications. Gomez herself addressed these issues publicly, explaining in a live stream that certain medications caused her to retain water weight. The medical record was never in dispute. Despite this, the replacement theory spread widely online. Some communities suggested Gomez had died from complications related to the transplant, and the woman now living publicly was a body double, placed to protect her brand. The theory escalated with an unverified screenshot of an email allegedly linked to Jeffrey Epstein that included the phrase, "decided about Selena." Though the email was never confirmed, it landed in an ongoing conversation and propelled it forward. In a 2021 interview, Gomez reflected on everything she had endured: lupus, her transplant, chemotherapy, mental health struggles, and public heartbreaks. She emphasized that her motivation to keep going was knowing her experiences could help others, yet the theories persisted. Next was Eminem. Rogan explained that the Eminem case was one music fans pushed back on the hardest. Rapper Tom MacDonald had already made the theory central to a song called "Cloned Rappers," claiming that the Illuminati had taken bone samples from artists who became too uncontrollable and used them to produce replacements. The originals were removed, while clones continued under the same name and face, with voices modified to be more manageable. Eminem, McDonald claimed, had not released authentic work since his Encore album in 2004. Gucci Mane and Kodak Black were also cited as additional cases. The theory gained unexpected fuel in 2024 when the Detroit News published what appeared to be an obituary for Eminem. It turned out to be a promotional piece for his album, The Death of Slim Shady, but whether deliberate or coincidental, it fit neatly into a long-running debate over whether the artist releasing music under that name was still the original. The Jamie Foxx case brought a different kind of intrigue. Rogan highlighted the timing, which was almost impossible to argue with. In April 2023, Foxx collapsed and was hospitalized. No specific cause was ever publicly disclosed, and he vanished from public life entirely for months. The pattern was striking. Diddy was arrested, then Foxx became sick. Diddy was sentenced, then Foxx reappeared. Cat Williams addressed it during a live performance, noting that the person who returned in Foxx's place had obvious physical differences. The replacement had freckles, a detail Foxx never had, and a tattoo on the back of his head was missing. Foxx eventually